We're going to look at task 3, the word processing task, of Edexcel's Functional Skills Level 2 March 2014 practice exam. This is quite a long video, so I've put contents at the beginning of the video and it marks where each of the topics start in the video, so you can jump straight to a particular topics if you want to know about how to put text boxes in, etc. Look up where it is in the contents at the beginning of this video and you can skip straight to that point. I would recommend that you watch the whole video because it will have some tips in there that you might find useful in the exam. The topics covered in this video includes setting margins, adding a footer, importing text and pictures, formatting the text and editing the pictures. That's resizing, adding borders and adding shadows to pictures, changing text to columns, adding text boxes and saving and auto-saving Word documents. Task 3 asks us to create a newsletter. The letter must be one side of A4 in portrait orientation, formatted to include columns, clear and easy to read and fit for purpose, and there's a list of information that must be included on it. The title, information we found from task 1, a text that's in a text file called Dell News, the logo and 2 other suitable images. The word suitable hints that there's going to be other images in the folder they give us that aren't going to be suitable. We have to have our name, candidate number and centre number in the footer, and it must be saved with a meaningful file name, and then they want us to print it out. At this stage now you could use Publisher instead of Microsoft Word. You could use Microsoft Publisher, but beware that quite often they have a task 3 part B where they ask you to password protect the document, where you can't do that with Publisher at the present time. So before you start on anything with Publisher, make sure you read through all of the tasks and check that it doesn't ask you to password protect it. So I would suggest you do it in Word. Either way, everything they ask you to do in task 3 can be done in Word, and if they ask you to password protect it, there's no problem there. It's also worth opening up and looking at the marking sheet that comes with the practice papers. I'll put in a link below, particularly on task 3, because you could spend half hour or more creating a really nice looking newsletter but not really have met many of the points that they want you to do. So it's worth getting familiar with the marking sheet, finding out the sort of things they give you points for and what they take points away from you for, and really just doing that, just doing enough to get all of the points, the maximum points, and then move on to the next task. You want to spend about 20 minutes or so on it, 20 minutes, half hour max, but within that 20 minutes, if you've looked at the marking sheet, you want to be doing things just that they give you points for. Don't waste your time on something that may look good and may be useful but they don't actually give you marks for. So read through task 3 or question 3 of the marking sheet and get some idea of the sort of things that they will give you points for. And they're quite finicky as well about some of the things. Certain titles must have certain words in it, etc. So get used to the way they do it. We want to be aiming for something like this, a quite plain, straightforward, one-page newsletter. This particular one is about driving in France. Not amazing, but it meets all of the criteria they've asked for. You should get near maximum points for this. First thing you want to do is open up a new document. If you're already in Word, Control N is a useful way of quickly opening up a new document. Otherwise go to File, New. First thing I like to do is the page setup. Set the margins to as narrow as you can get them. That way you can fit more on the page. One of the main problems we have with Task 3 is sometimes fitting everything on the page, keeping in mind you can't make the text or pictures too small. So go to the page layout and margins, set them to narrow. You can also, whilst you're in the layout tab, check that the orientation is on portrait. It should be by default, and the size will be A4 by default. First thing I like to do is to put all of the text and the pictures on the page, so you've got some idea of how much text and pictures you're talking about. Gives you some idea of how to lay it out. The easiest way is just to open up the text file they've given us, select all, Control A, or File or Edit, select all, copy it, Control C, and then we can close it and go back to the Word document and paste it in. Now it's worth reading through at this point and getting rid of any text that isn't relevant. Quite often we'll put in a sentence or a paragraph that is just nothing to do with the topic that you're doing. Like this is about driving in France, but they may well put something on about making ice cream. Make sure that you find any irrelevant text and take it out. Now the only irrelevant text that they've got on here is things like the labels, so they've labelled that as a title, information about the company, contact details. That could stay in, but yeah, leave it in for time being. Article 1, that should be out. Article 2 should go, and that's it. So you can see already we've got over a page. Just with standard font size we've got over a page. Now I'm going to pop some of the images in. Go to the folder they've given you, and more often than not they'll just be named image 1, 2, 3. So it's a job to know which ones of them are relevant and which aren't. So you want to change the view, which is down in the bottom right hand side of the window. Click on the displays using large thumbnail. There's a shortcut there, Control Shift and 2. Now you can actually see which ones are relevant. So that's the logo, image 1. There's a bicycle there, which probably isn't relevant. There's a petrol, which could be because it's about fuel, saving fuel. There's driving in France as a road sign, a go-kart and a car. Well, the go-kart and the bicycle aren't relevant, and indeed it says that in the marking sheet that you would lose a point if you included them. So I'm going to use the logo and then these two signs here. One way is just drag and drop picture into your Word document, or you can go insert picture and then navigate to where the pictures are kept and do it that way. You can see the pictures are way too large, so I'm just going to increase the size just roughly. It's going to be roughly that sort of size. And insert the next picture, which is going to be the petrol pump. Just going to click and drag that across. I'm just going to resize that a little bit. Just going to press enter to go underneath it and put the last picture in. Again, that's way too large, so I'm just going to roughly decrease the size. Just so I can get an idea of what I'm working with, and there's 2 pages more or less there, so we're going to have to reduce picture size and make the text not a lot smaller because they won't allow it much smaller, but we're going to have to be a little bit clever with moving things around. And this is quite often the hardest part of the Task 3, getting it all to fit on one page. Now I'm also going to add my name, student number and centre number into the footer now. So double click in the very bottom of the page, add your name, press tab and add the centre number, press tab, centre number. So that's name, student number and centre number, and then press escape to come out of the footer. Now an important thing to do, and you should really do it as soon as you open up a Word document, is to save it save it as something, and then go into the automatic save and set that to a low number. So you want to be trying to save as often as you can, and the easiest way is Control and S, pressing the Control and S keys together. But if you set up the automatic save, it will do it for you. So I'm just going to save as. Now a good shortcut for that is the F12 key, or you can go to the File menu, Save As, and Browse, navigate to the folder they want you to save it into, and give it a sensible name. Now if you've already imported the text, it will say Dell Customer Newsletter. I'm just going to add the word summer and then save. Check it's a latest version of Word. Click Save. Now if you go to the File options, Save, you can set the Save Auto Recovery information. It's set a default of 10 minutes. Set it down to 2 minutes whilst you're doing the exam, if you can. If you're on a network that lets you do that, you can certainly do that at home. Click OK. Now every 2 minutes Words will automatically save it. It's not a problem if you can't do that, just you should be pressing Control and S regularly anyway. You can't afford to have a crash and lose your information in the exam. They won't allow that as a problem. You potentially could fail the exam, unfair as it is. First thing I'm doing is going to make the title, I'm going to centre it, and a good shortcut for that is Control and E together. I'm going to make it bold and underlined, and I'm going to make it size 22. The summer 2004 subheading, I'm going to make that size 16. I'm going to right align it. I don't think I'll have it bold for the time being. All the rest of the text, so I'm going to select the rest of it now. I'm going to set it just down one size, from 11 to 10. I'm going to leave it at the Calibra font. That's okay for the time being. Now this little bit of the text, I'm going to leave that as one column, but I am going to fully justify it, so I'm going to click on that. That's the sort of intro. I'm going to put the logo up here. The contact details, I'm going to lose that. I don't really need that bit, but I'll keep the address, email and website. But this, I'm going to put this in a text box down the bottom, so I'm just going to cut it for the time being and get it out of the way. Shortcut for cut is Control X. I'm just going to go down onto the other page, hit enter a couple of times to make some space, and paste it, Control V, or you can use these controls in the home menu, left hand side of the home ribbon. I'm also going to put the information I found in task 1, so you need to find the bits of text where it says enter the information you found in section A. So select it all the way from the less than signs to the greater than signs and replace that. In this case it was May 1994, and the next bit of information it wants you to put in from task 1 is here, and that was how many miles it was, so it's 31.35. Word miles is already in there for you. And the last bit of information was the speed limit, and that was 80 mph open bracket 130 space kph. Now I'm following exactly what they've already put in for us. I've done a space and then lowercase mph, and then in brackets they've got the kph, so I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the information I've put in. Do Control S to save. Now I want to add the 2 articles, that's one, and that's the other. I want to add them to change them to columns. I'm actually going to come up a bit because there's quite a lot of space there, and then select the 2 articles but not the contact information or the pictures, and I'm going to just set that to columns 2. So if you go to the layout ribbon and then the columns menu, and I'm just going to choose 2, I'm going to fully justify the text. You can change the amount of space in between the columns. If you really need to struggling to fit everything on one page, that's an option that you could do. I think we're probably just about going to get away with it here, but that is an option. So that's columns. Select the text, all of the text that you want to change into columns. You go to the layout ribbon, columns menu, and you can either choose column 2 or 3 columns. If you want more control over it, go to the more columns option, and here you can choose, let's say, 2 columns, but here you can change the spacing and the width of the columns, which is quite useful if you need to squeeze more on a page. Don't need to do it here, I don't think, so I'll cancel out of that. And now let's move the images where we want them. So to move them around, at the moment they're treated as text, so if you put them on a line it will move the text either side of it. But we don't want to wrap the text around in this particular one, we just want it to show, as it's a logo, let's have it behind the text. Now I can move it up, just click and drag. You see it doesn't move the text around. Be careful you don't put it right behind the text, you won't be able to get it. And I think that's probably okay there. You've got to be careful of the print margins. Maybe move that down a little bit. If it didn't have that blue border around it, it would be better. We could then move it so that the title was actually over the bonnet of the car, but because we've got the border around it, we can't do that. Now it makes the title doesn't look quite right, so I think we're going to have to just tab to move that across a bit, make it look a little bit better. Okay, that's all right. We're going to have a final sort of move around of it when we get all of the pictures in place, etc. So we've got this area down here to put 2 pictures and the contact information. I'll just go back to a finished one. So it's going to look something like that. We've got the 2 pictures, and the size of them, they're around about 4.5 centimetres high. Ideally you want them the same size. Small text box in the middle and some text at the bottom. So let's move the first one. Whilst we're here, we'll also add a border and a shadow to the pictures. Some pictures, like logo, it wouldn't work because it's already got a border around it and it's got the white space, but these photographs, it's better to have some sort of border. When you click on a photo, a new ribbon appears, the Picture Tools Format ribbon. You can set the border and shadow effect yourself, but if you choose one of the pre-select styles, that one there, now that's got a bit too thick border for my liking, so I'm just going to go into the picture border, change the weight down to 1. See, there's a slight subtle shadow there and a slight border. I'm also going to change the colour of the border. Their colour scheme, I haven't really got a colour scheme there. If there's a definite colour scheme, then you can just change the colour of the borders to match it. So this one's a dark blue, which they've got dark blue in the logo, so I'll go in and make that dark blue. That looks a little bit better. I'm going to do the same thing on the next picture. Now you can copy and paste format style, but I'm just going to run through it again just to show you. Choose the style that's closest to the one you want. Set the weight or the thickness of the line down a bit, and this is up to you what you prefer. And I'm also going to change the colour to the blue. I want to wrap the text around. Again, I'm not going to have text around like so. I'm going to have it in front of text this time, just to make it easier for me to move it around. So I'm right clicking on the image, I'm going down the context menu to wrap text, clicking on that and going down to in front of text. Now you see it's moved it around. I'm going to put one there. Where's the other picture gone? Word's good at this, moving pictures around. It's gone up there. So I'm just clicking and dragging it down. It's going to go somewhere but like that. I'm also going to check the size from here. That's up here in the format menu. It's about 4.73. I'm going to drop it down to 4.6. I'm going to make the next picture the same size. So click on it, go over to the format menu, click on the size, the height button, till it gets down to 4.6. So they're about equal size. I'm just going to move that more over to the right, that one more over to the left. As you move around, you'll get these green lines, guidelines put in. They're quite useful so you know their level. You can select them both by holding down the shift key and clicking on the second image, and then go to the align menu and say align top or middle or whatever to make sure they're in line. Hit enter. The text has gone behind there, so that's what I'm going to put into text box. I'm going to put one text box there and another text box underneath. It's going to be pretty tight actually, but I also want to make sure, going back to these columns, that the article 1 is in one column and article 2 starts at the top and fits in the other column. So I've got a line here spare. I'm just going to hit backspace, that brings it up to there. Now these subtitles, you get a point for making any headings different from the text of the body text. You get a point for making the titles and subtitles different, but also any headings. So that's an article heading, so I'm going to underline that. I'm going to make it bold and underline, and that's an article heading, so I'm going to do the same. There's Control B, Control U, useful shortcuts for that. And these subheadings, I'm just going to make these bold. As long as they're different, visibly different from the body text, you get the point. So that's it. Oh, there's another one there. Wait. What I could do was moving all the text up a fraction. How big is that logo? Make it a little bit smaller, 3.6, 3.7, and I'm just going to move it up just a fraction. So I'm going to click there and click the backspace to move that up one line. It's a bit tight, isn't it? I think we're going to get away with that. Whilst I'm here now, anywhere there's a name or a date or time, you really need to make that different from the rest of the text. So the easiest way is just making any names bold. Name, and really any sort of dates or time. I'm sure about the 2009. Try and make that italic. And anywhere there's down here, we'll make the labels bold. As well. I'm going to put that in a text box in a second. Okay, now I think I can move this line up a little bit, just about get away with it. It's looking a little bit tight. Now let's add a text box to the centre here. If you go to Insert, Text Box, and then go down to Draw Text Box and click on that, and then you can click with your left mouse button and draw where you want the box to go. So hopefully I'm going to try and fit the text in there. It's going to go in there. I'm going to copy this information and the telephone number. I'm going to cut it, paste it into there. I'm going to put it all on its own one line. And there's a difference between the gaps in between here, so I'm going to select it all. I'm going to go to the paragraph section and remove spacing after So now the equal spacing between each one, and I'm just going to make a blank line underneath telephone number. I think I'm actually going to centre this text as well. And I'm going to lose the border around the text box. The text box is just for placing the text where I want it, it's not for show. So as it's an object, there's a new menu been put in on the ribbon, Drawing Tools Format menu, and I can go to Shape Outline, No Outline. That's better. And the last bit of information can go on this last line here. So I'm going to cut the website information, paste that there. Then I'm going to tab until I get in line with the picture or close to it, and then that's where the email information is going to go. So select that, cut it, and paste. I'm pressing the space bar to move my cursor over once. That turns any live links and any links, email links or websites, to live links. They go blue and get underlined. Now, even though it's a printed paper, you're printing this off, you do get a point or lose a point if you haven't made these live links. Now I've got an extra page now which is blank, so I'm just going to click on it and hit backspace just to remove it. I've actually got two lines to play with. I can move the text down a little bit. I think I will here because it's a bit squashed. That's it. Fits okay. So that's essentially it. Then you want to go around and make sure the spacings are okay. In theory, I could probably drop that, space that out a little bit better. Still fits okay. Pictures are on there, all of the text is on there. That's it. I mean, we can stop there, we can save, and we should be hitting Control S all the way through. You can save that there, and you more or less would have got, going by their marking sheet, nearly all of the points there, and you don't need to spend any more time on that. It's not the best looking newsletter in the world, but it's for the exam, it does everything we need to. So don't need to spend any more time on that. That's been about half hour doing it, but I've been explaining it as I go, so you would probably do it a little bit quicker. Print it off now, and then read through it carefully. Double check that everything prints off okay. Make sure your names come out, information, and everything's there. Read through the exam. Make sure you haven't made any blinding errors. And that's it. On to task 4. Any questions? Put it in the comments, and I'll try and answer them for you.